Well, welcome everybody to today's RefugEAP Network meetup. I'm Alex Palanak and I'm the RefugEAP Network convener. If this is your first RefugEAP Network event, I'm just going to briefly outline what the network is. So it's largely made up of EAP practitioners, so that's English for Academic Purposes practitioners, and researchers, which aims to facilitate the development and implementation of pathway to higher education English language provision for refugee background students, with a particular focus on English for academic purposes. So this fourth event in the series has a slightly different focus from the previous three events. Many of us have been looking on in horror at the genocide unfolding in Gaza and the edukide which forms part of this. And we've been wondering what we as EAP practitioners or ELT or higher education practitioners might be able to do about this to support Gazan students either now or in the future when the situation on the ground becomes more stable. To date, all Gazan universities have been either completely destroyed or severely damaged, and Gaza's 88,000 students are currently unable to study. So when thinking about a suitable speaker for this fourth RefugEAP Network meetup, someone who had experience of delivering an EAP program involving Gazan students, Dr. Bill Guariento came to mind. So I will leave it to him to go into the specifics of his fantastic project, and I'll go on to introduce him now. So Bill is program leader on the BA English Language and Linguistics at Northumbria University, and he previously taught EAP at the University of Glasgow. His PhD looked at tele-collaboration on EAP courses between universities in the global north and south, with the Islamic University of Gaza as the principal collaborator. His most recent work with Caroline Burns and colleagues at the Islamic University of Glasgow and Northumbria investigated Global South female engineering lecturers' feelings about using English as a medium of instruction, but this was interrupted by the war in Gaza. So it's my pleasure to have Bill with us here today to talk about his project. And his talk will then lead into question and answers, and then there will be wider discussion after that. Just to say that that the project that Bill will be talking about today, this research was conducted a few years ago now. And so we're kind of aware that this is something that happened a few years ago. However, many of the lessons that come out of that are very, very relevant to today's situation. And also just to say that, you know, Bill has obviously had this experience of working closely with the Gazan University, but doesn't profess to be an expert in everything related to what can be done in this current day situation. But we're hoping that him sharing his experiences is going to be a kind of springboard into a useful discussion about what we might be able to do to help. Okay, so I'm going to hand over now to Bill.
Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. Can you put a thumbs up there, Alex, if that's okay? Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. So, as Alex said, it's 4 years since I published this work, so I'm out of date for sure, and I've given similar talks to this in the past, and coming back to it now, I've had to take out certain things just because they made me so sad to put them in. So the videos that I might normally have put in, this is a different version. Anyway, so I'm going to give an overview of my PhD research, and I did it in Glasgow from 2015 to 2020. I also worked with colleagues in Chile and in Malawi, but mainly, as Alex said, in Gaza. It obviously had many shortcomings even before the awful bombings and destruction now. I'm interested in how working with the Global South relates to issues of power, and I'm interested in listening to your ideas about how I might take it forward at Northumbria University, where I work now, even though I no longer teach EAP. So I'm looking forward to the discussion with you, with everyone afterwards. So basically, for 5 years in Glasgow, I led an EAP for engineering course. And I felt that engineering, I know nothing about engineering, but I felt that it lends itself to an SPRE approach, which you may have come across: situation, problem, response, evaluation, which is absolutely ideal for language teaching. And obviously, engineers have to deal with societal situations which contain many problems, and they can be important people putting forward responses and then evaluating the responses. And all of these moments in an engineering EAP course involve students talking together. So there's lots of speaking there. So obviously that's good for EAP. So just to show you, this was a lesson that got me thinking about the course that evolved. So these are materials that I would have in a typical lesson on my EAP for engineering course. So presumably you've done lots of problem-solving activities yourself. This one, you divide the students in the middle of that slide into groups, and you give each group the same materials, so a couple of sheets of A4 paper, some elastic bands, some matches, some scissors, a ping pong ball, some sellotape, some string, and you tell them they've got to build a bridge from a table to another table, and then you let them do it. And after they've done it, they can criticize each other's bridges. They can go off and read about how experts in journals have made their own bridges. They can write up their own procedure. They can learn how to write up procedures. They build a bridge. That's 1 hour's work, but it's a 5 hour long lesson. Really, it's very useful. Task-based learning. It's task-based learning. And I felt another reason why I was interested in engineering is because there's obviously in the UK, there's been this market-led turn into higher education in the past 20 to 30 years, which is, I feel, quite unhealthy. And this has often led to what Shaw and others call disqualified discourses, things that you can't really talk about at university, and subjugated knowledges, things that students can't really learn about, don't have the opportunity to learn about at university. And some people, such as Morrissey, think that engineering is particularly affected by this. He wonders whether this is actually affecting the content that engineering students learn. So that was a second reason I wanted to open engineers' minds to societal issues, particularly concerning the global South. Now, at Glasgow University, like most universities in the UK, there's been internationalization, and it should be a good thing to have students from all around the world on our campuses. But, oops, I don't know why it's not moving forward here, my slide. Oh, excuse me. Obviously, it's market-led, so it depends on whether you can pay to come and study in the UK. Some countries, particularly poor countries in the global South, send very few students to EAP courses. The internationalization in itself still has disqualified discourses. And in fact, as Otten said, even if students come from other countries, quite often there won't be much intercultural contact anyway. At Glasgow, we had 60-70% students with Mandarin as their first language. So, that restricted the intercultural contact. And then a recent addition to this, based on my experience at Northumbria, what happens if and when overseas market dries up? It's a very dangerous thing to be depending on rich students from other countries. So I thought, anyway, telecollaboration would be a good solution. So that is definition here by O'Dowd and O'Rourke, bringing together groups of learners from different cultures for extended periods of online intercultural collaboration and interaction, done as part of an integrated educational program and under the guidance of educators who are expert facilitators. So the challenge for me is that telecollaboration is almost always between the global north and the global north. That is basically between rich countries and rich countries. So it would be something like Sweden to the US or France to the UK, that sort of thing. Now, in terms of engineering, well, in terms of links between the global north and the global south, there are a couple of interesting exceptions to the rule, and they both challenge disqualified discourses. One is a program run by the European Union called Solaya, and it puts universities in the EU, which we are unfortunately in the UK no longer a member of, but we were when I started at Glasgow. But it puts universities in the UK in contact with students in countries around the southern Mediterranean, like Tunisia, Algeria, Palestine, places like that. Problem is, it caters mainly for arts and humanities students. So my program with engineers, it wasn't going to work with. There's another great program called Engineers Without Borders. And every year, engineers in the UK are given a problem from a different global south area or country, a specific problem, and they have to compete together to come up with solutions to this problem. So in one year it was Tanzania, another year it was a state in India who presented the problems. But the problem is there's no end user in the global south. There's no conversation between people in the global north and the global south. You just come up with a solution without ever talking to anyone. So I thought, why not link engineers in the global north and the global south to work together to look for responses to engineering challenges? And this became the English for Academic Study Telecollaboration Project, which I called EAST. And so it consisted on the left of non-UK engineers who were hoping to enter a course at the University of Glasgow, and they had to improve their English. And in the global south, you would have master's level engineering students in Chile, Gaza, and Malawi, and they'd be working together. So if you imagine you run an EAP course every summer at a UK university, you have 100 engineers from China, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, etc. They want to join a master's course. They need to improve their reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills in English. And you want to involve students from the global south who are unable to come and study in the UK. Okay, and already we're getting towards the weakness of the project, which is the massive inequity in this relationship, which I'll come back to. So on the first day in the first week, they would watch videos produced by students from the global south, which were explaining the problems that interest them in their own countries. This is where I've redacted a beautiful video by somebody in Gaza because it was just too horrible for me to watch, knowing. Yeah. Anyway, there was, for another example, would be, and in the final week of the course, the students in Glasgow would be presenting the work that they've done over the course of the 5 weeks, together with the people in Gaza or Chile, and they would present it together in Glasgow in front of me and my team of teachers, and we would be evaluating the work. So I'm not going to show you an example from Chile, but there was a nice example here. but these are sample projects. So you see that they've all got engineering. They're all engineering based, but interestingly, they all have a societal impact, which is what I think makes it very important in terms of the disqualified discourses, overcoming the issues that I have with engineering that I mentioned before. So fare evasion in Santiago's transport system, water drainage and sea pollution in Gaza, toxicity of pesticides in Gaza, sanitation in Malawi, theft of irrigation water in Chile, development of Arabic optical character recognition and lack of addresses in Gaza. The final one seems the weirdest one, but in Gaza, even before the destruction, houses didn't have addresses, so there was a technological challenge for the engineers. How do you actually deliver parcels to a place that doesn't have addresses? And I think at the end of the, Alex has already mentioned a very short article that I wrote with my colleague Caroline Burns, which has a beautiful diagram produced by a student from Thailand in the first week, trying to get his head around the societal impact of the fact that Gaza doesn't have addresses, has been bombed, and what can he do as an engineer to try to find a solution to that. Okay, so the Glasgow-based students gained English language practice, of course. They may have learned some new content knowledge in their interactions with the people in the Global South over 5 weeks of the course. They may have learned problem-solving skills. They certainly learned team working skills. They're based in groups of 2, 3, 4 in Glasgow, so they have to work together, and they have to work together with people in the Global South. They may, I doubt it, but they may enhance their digital literacies. There's cognitive challenges and working on what Coyle calls pluriliteracies. There are cultural challenges, of course. And I think the important thing is that they're overcome inductively, because many courses have overt attempts to teach people about intercultural, developing their intercultural competencies. But I think an advantage of this method is that the students are learning by doing. And very importantly, they learn about real world issues, because a lot of them, even people coming from China or India, they tend to be privileged people. They may come from what we would call the Global South, but they're rich enough to come to Glasgow. So they learn about real world issues that they may not have even seen in their own countries. And this may mean facing up to disturbing dialogues. Excuse me, I can't actually see my whole screen, so I don't know if I'm getting I can only see dist. I don't know if it's disturbing or not, but and the most important thing is they get access to their master's course. That's for them obviously absolutely vital. They improve their English enough to get access to their master's course. So what do the people in the Global South get from Gaza or Chile or Malawi? Well, they get all of these things, but they certainly don't get the last one, which is the massive imbalance in the relationship. They give up their free time in order to be able to help us on our EAP course. So Deborah Cameron, wonderful book, which is in the bibliography. She talks about empowering a partner, and she has 3 levels. So one is, does whatever you do have the use of interactive methods? the researcher must seek active cooperation, must disclose the researcher's goals. And I think, yes, I think I could tick that with what we did. The importance of subjects' own agendas, acknowledging partners' agendas as well as my own. To some extent, yes, we tried to build in what people in Gaza, for example, wanted us to look at, and we allowed the people in Gaza to terrible word. Anyway, the people in Gaza presented problems that they thought would be that needed addressing. So to some extent, the subjects had their own agendas. And the question of feedback and sharing knowledge, yes, to some extent, we certainly every year we were able to change the project slightly on the basis of what the people in Gaza were telling us, and we published work together with researchers from the Islamic University of Gaza, and we were able to access funding from the European Union to bring students from Gaza to the University of Glasgow. But there are loads of ethical dilemmas, like what can you do in just 5 weeks? Well, Conan on the right, my rationalizations really. Cohen and Obamba say that it takes time to build constructive, collaborative partnerships with overseas partners. It takes a while to build trust, to explore mutual needs. So probably after 5 years, I was just about, we built the trust. We knew our needs. Another ethical dilemma is that there are more benefits, and the benefits are much more immediate to the global north-based students. They enter their master's programs. So possible rebalancing there would be funding bids to provide more benefits for the universities in the global south. I'm interested in moving from pre-sessional to in-sessional work, which I've tried to do since I came to work at Northumbria. And the most interesting ethical dilemma for me is this last one on the left by a Canadian scholar based at the University of British Columbia. She's obviously had a lot of work with native Canadian peoples, the First Nation. And she's saying, when a university like the University of Glasgow, when a university permits a project such as the East Project, is the project hacking the system, which was what I always wanted to think, that I was doing some good and helping to be a bit subversive. So is the project hacking the system, or is the project being hacked by the system? By that, Andreotti means is the university allowing me just enough wiggle room to think I'm doing something that might be subversive, when in fact I'm just not even producing a sticking plaster, really. So it's a great article, Andreotti's article, if you have time. But then Alison Phipps, one of my colleagues, my PhD supervisor in Glasgow, she said that she kindly rationalized it for me by demanding the end to all domination and by refusing to associate with the institutions of society and political power. We try to cover over the mess of life rather than working together to find ways of living together that will include even embrace the impossibilities. So I think that's probably quite a good quote for where we are at the moment with the awful things going on in Gaza. It seems that working is impossible, but we can find ways to work together in the future, I hope. And I'm looking forward to. I've nearly finished. I think, summary of benefits. Global North students learn about issues of social justice. When I say Global North students, I mean the ones who come to Glasgow from China or wherever. There are obvious language benefits. The Gazan students have a witnessing, which is important. And Paulo Freire talks about avoiding banking educations. Everyone takes a risk, and by so doing, grows. And I'm looking for the elephant in the room. I'm looking forward to discussing how we could take forward language collaboration with students in Gaza in the future. And the first link there is to the paper that I think Alex has already shared. And the second one is to the paper I wrote recently with since the destruction and killing in Gaza, which I wrote with my colleague Caroline Burns, and has the lovely diagram by the student. It's a very short paper with a beautiful diagram by the student in Thailand. And I think that's all. And thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Bill. I'm just going to stop the recording now.